So, dear colleagues, please take your seat that we are almost ready to start. I'm just waiting a signal from Sasha.
We need a culture of evaluation, independent and real-time evaluation with full transparency.
At a gathering similar to this one, I stressed the importance of strengthening evaluation. Since then, I have been pleased to see that not only the United Nations Evaluation Group, but also member states and evaluators from around the world have risen to the challenge.
At the end of the day, this is a political agenda. It is one that is voluntary. But how can we incentivize it so everyone wants to get involved and really sees evaluation and review as something that is a must-have and do better and add value to the agenda that we have?
In the 20 months that have passed since world leaders came together to adopt the 17 Sustainable Development Goals and their 169 targets, the international community has taken on board the critical role that evaluation, statistics and data have to play in driving through the successful transformation that we all seek.
Nearly 1.1 billion people have emerged from extreme poverty since the 1990s. But around 700 million still live on less than $1.90 a day, lacking enough food, clean drinking water, and sanitation. To combat global poverty, the Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, not only renew our resolve, but also binds us all together on our commitment to end poverty by 2030. To support and intensify momentum towards attaining the SDGs, the United Nations Evaluation Group, also known as UNEG, has dedicated its 2017 Evaluation Week to the role of evaluation in eradicating poverty and promoting prosperity in a changing world. Staff from more than 40 evaluation offices in the UN system will gather in Vienna to share and exchange knowledge, innovations, best practices, and lessons within the field of evaluation. Eradicating poverty remains one of the greatest global challenges facing humanity. Data and evaluation insights on what works or what doesn't will be vital for transformational change towards shared prosperity. Strengthening national evaluation capacities will allow governments to follow up and assess progress for achieving their development goals. Together, we must maximize our results so that by 2030, prosperity reaches every man, woman, and child, and no one is left behind. Welcome to the 2017 UNEG Evaluation Week.
Well, dear colleagues and friends, once again, welcome to the 2017 UNEG Evaluation Week, and in particular to the high-level events on evaluation of SDGs. As you can see from the program, we have really a very interesting and rich and diverse panel today. But before going to the panel, I would like to invite Dr. Lassina Zerbo, the Executive Secretary of the Preparatory Commission for the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty Organizations, to give the welcoming and opening remarks.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the Vienna-based UN agencies, it is my pleasure to welcome you to the 2017 UNEG high-level event here in the Vienna International Center. This is indeed a crucial time for members of this important network. As the 2030 agenda moves firmly into the implementation phase, evidence generated by the evaluation will be needed to guide progress. This poses a twin challenge for the UN system, ensuring that our system-wide evaluation mechanisms are fit for purpose and that we succeed in strengthening national evaluation system so that evaluation of the Sustainable Development Goals is fully owned at the country level. One way in which we can make progress is by learning from each other. UN entities have many different mandates and sometimes operate in what might seem to be mutually exclusive spheres of activities. That is why it is so important that UNEG continues to work well as a network for our evaluation professionals. I'm sure many of you, or maybe some, may not be very familiar with the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty Organization, the CTBTO, which we represent the PrepCom here in Vienna, and which I'm proud to lead. Let me take this opportunity, because trust me, I miss no opportunity in making sure that we spread the word out for the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty. For a simple reason, it's because some people, our name is so complicated, CTBT in English and OTCE in French, that people wonder what this organization is all about. But the CTBT prohibits nuclear test explosion on any other explosion and provide a global verification regime to ensure compliance. And that's one of the key and main elements of this organization. We are supposedly a preparatory commission, but we had an organizational framework that represents over 300 staff with a network, an international monitoring system that is about 337 facilities around the world that monitors the planet, the atmosphere, the underground, the ocean, and with a fourth technology that brings what we call a smoking gun that will give a nuclear nature of anything we do and any event we detect. And i.e., for those who follow what's happening now with the DPRK. But not only that, we represent 183 countries, and that seems to not be something that many people know. And 103 countries have signed this treaty, and 166 have ratified. But there are many treaties who have less member states who are running and who are in force today. But the CTBT is one of this organization and difficult treaty whereby they put a clause in, maybe because they never wanted this treaty to be in force whatsoever. But we're working hard to make it happen, whereby we have 44 countries that represent the Annex 2 of the treaty, which ratification is absolutely necessary for its entry into force. And among those 44, 36 have done so, and there are 8 countries that I often say are holding hostage the treaty, but not the organization and its international monitoring system. So that is about us. So that does not mean that we stand still. Despite being so-called a preparatory phase, over 20 years after the opening of signature of the treaty, there's a little preparatory or provisional about our work. As I mentioned, the international monitoring system envisaged by the treaty, which represent the facility that I've mentioned, the 337 stations, laboratories worldwide, is almost complete and is working to provide states with data on events that could be characterized as nuclear tests. So, evaluation is a vital part of what we do. Article 14 of the treaty provides the need of monitoring, assessing, and reporting on the overall performance of the verification regime. In the run-up to the entry into force, evaluation is needed to define the framework, the performance of various areas of development and provisional operation of our verification regime. The mechanisms we use include a web-based platform that allows senior management and state signatories a real-time view of the performance of the system as a whole. Altogether, we are constructing a system that will allow us to better assess performance and project and system levels. The UNEG norms and standards for evaluation developed and adopted by this group in 2005 and updated in 2016 have provided fundamental guidance in our endeavors. As I mentioned, regardless of the difference in activities of our organizations, there is a common need for evaluation processes to be inclusive, involving stakeholders and transparent approaches, and fostering evaluation capacity building in member countries. Returning to the topic of 2030 agenda, I would like to underscore the contribution of the CTBTO to sustainable development and disaster risk reduction. Apart from detecting nuclear test explosion or potential nuclear test explosion, the data collected around the globe by the international monitoring system can be put to a wide range of civil and scientific uses. These include early warning on potential tsunami-generating earthquake, tracking of the dispersion of radionuclide after nuclear disaster. Fukushima is a great example to that, and the use of data ocean and climate change-related research. More broadly, we contribute to promote peace, helping realize a vision of a world free of the threat of conflict in an integral part of delivering the 2030 agenda. This afternoon, various distinguished speakers from the UN system, member states and national evaluation will share with us their perspective on the importance of evaluation in eradicating poverty and promoting prosperity in a changing world. In this regard, I would also like to congratulate UNEG for dedicating this year's Evaluation Week to this important topic. It is clear that objective evidence and data from evaluations will continue to be essential to better inform, direct, and strengthen Sustainable Development Goals efforts and intervention aimed at eradicating poverty. Ladies and gentlemen, in concluding, I wish to congratulate you all, UNEG, for its highly professional work under the capable leadership of its chair, aiming at empowering and strengthening the evaluation function across the United Nations system. The level of attendance today, which I'm informed comprises over 150 participants, representing UN organizations, NGOs, diplomatic missions, host government representatives, and the media, underscores the importance that various stakeholders attach to the theme of this year, high-level event and the work of UNEG. I wish you a successful and productive event and look forward to the learning it generates. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Zerbo. I would like now to invite Dr. Dazhu Yang, Deputy Director General for Technical Cooperation of the International Atomic Energy Agencies, for also the opening remarks, please.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Vienna. I'm very pleased to have the opportunity to speak to you at today's high-level event as you gather to discuss the challenges and opportunities related to evaluation of policies and strategies for eradicating poverty and promoting prosperity. As you no doubt aware, the IAEA is a technical organization. As such, It offers highly specific deliveries in the development field. The deliveries which are increasingly important in today's era of the Sustainable Development Goals, which place such a strong emphasis on the contribution of the science and technology to the development. For IAEA, this contribution is very clear. For example, nuclear techniques are indispensable in cancer diagnosis and treatment, and they provide essential support and data for human nutrition studies, food security and safety, water resource management, and environmental protection and industry. The IAEA assists its member states in their efforts to address their development needs by helping them in building human and institutional capacity to apply nuclear technology for peaceful purposes, safety, and security. The IAEA's Technical Cooperation Program is the main mechanism for the transfer of nuclear technology. In fact, the transfer of agencies' development services. We are consistently looking for ways to improve our services to our member states and gain efficiencies and to measure the impact of our program. Evaluation plays an important role in this process of continuous improvement. The agency's Department of Technical Cooperation is a regular evaluation client, and we collaborate closely with our colleagues in OIOS. This collaboration takes different forms and directions. Staff involved in the management of TC program share their knowledge and understanding of the IAEA activities carried out in support member states with evaluation teams. In return, the program managers benefit from in-depth insights provided by the evaluations of their work. For my department, the results of the evaluations offered us an opportunity to learn from our own practices and results. Evaluations help us to identify areas of work that require adjustment if we are ultimately to deliver better results to our member states. We have to be able to gather evidence of the outcomes and the impact of our work, and the evaluation is a highly effective instrument for this. Let me give you some example. In recent years, evaluations have promoted better monitoring practices in the Department of Technical Cooperation. The monitoring mechanisms that the department has established based on the OIOS recommendations will enhance our internal capacity to identify and share what we do well. The mechanism will also stimulate the internal capacities to make any necessary corrections in a timely manner. In recent years, the evaluators and auditors have joined forces to provide a mix of lesson learning and a quality insurance for the agency's portfolio of country-level activities. My department has been an enthusiast client and supporter of this new and efficient approach. It delivers a snapshot of our work's relevance, effectiveness, and efficiency, and sustainability with selected member states. As we embark upon the journey to support 2030 agenda, UN system organizations need to be able to report their contributions to a higher level of sustainable development goals. This means that each UN organization must not only be able to report against its own objectives, but also all organizations must work together towards the achievement of these overarching and high-level goals. I'm convinced that the collaboration of the UN organizations through the joint fora, such as the United Nations Evaluation Group, will help pave the way to a close collaboration within the UN system as a whole. With this in mind, I wish you highly fruitful discussions during the rest of this evaluation week. I thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Yang. Well, dear colleagues and friends, you just heard that likely the global evaluation community is blessed with high-level friends. In the video that also we just saw, as a reminder, the notes from Ban Ki-moon, the previous Secretary General, and by Amina Mohammed, they were taken from the 2015 UNEG Evaluation Week that was organized 2 years ago in New York, where they came and they joined us to share with us really the importance of evaluations for the SDGs and for sustainable development. That was in the framework, that happened in the framework of the International Year of Evaluation in 2015, that, if you recall, also was officially acknowledged by the UN General Assembly, thanks to the first ever UN resolution on national evaluation capacity development that was led by Peter Thomson, who is the permanent representative of Fiji to the UN. So under the leadership of Peter Thomson, 48 countries of the UN General Assembly agreed to endorse this UN resolution on national evaluation capacity development. When we invited Peter Thomson, that meanwhile he was elected as the president of the UN General Assembly, of the 31st session of the UN General Assembly, he immediately said yes, because he's a true champion for evaluation in policy making, but unfortunately he was not able to join us today physically, but he agreed to send us a message through a video. So I would like just to invite the Secretariat to show the video from Peter Thomson, the President of the UN General Assembly.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it's a great pleasure to address the annual general meeting of the UN Evaluation Group on the margins of this year's Evaluation Week in Vienna. I'm reminded that 2 years ago, when I was president of the UNDP, UNFPA, UNOPS board, I had the honor of addressing the event marking the International Year of Evaluation with all of you at the Evaluation Week, which was held in New York at that time. You may recall that together with the former Secretary General Ban Ki-moon and now Deputy Secretary General Amina Mohammed, I lit the torch of evaluation as it commenced its journey around the world. It was also a privilege for me to introduce the Fiji-led 2014 General Assembly resolution on capacity building for the evaluation of development activities at the country level. No doubt the efficacy of my words are being evaluated even as I speak today. So can I add that in the lengthy negotiations leading to the adoption of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, along with other members of the Fiji delegation, I spoke repeatedly on the importance of embedding the evaluation process into the agenda's implementation. Tick. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the theme of the 2017 week to mark UN evaluation, which is eradicating poverty and promoting prosperity in a changing world, could not be more timely. In the 20 months that have passed since world leaders came together to adopt the 17 Sustainable Development Goals and their 169 targets, the international community has taken on board the critical role that evaluation, statistics, and data have to play in driving through the successful transformation that we all seek. The growing prominence of evaluation is grounded in our need for reporting, whether there is progress or not. Reporting that is objective and evidence-based, relying on accessible, timely, and reliable data that allows policymakers to make informed SDG implementation decisions. Since the adoption of the 2030 Agenda, we've already seen significant advances in the field of global statistics. The first global SDG indicator framework has been agreed to, and the UN's first annual Sustainable Development Goals report has been released. Both indicate our SDG implementation starting line and identifying areas of early progress and measuring the scale of the challenge ahead. As these and other reports are released over time, they will be central to achieving the fundamentals of the SDGs, helping governments and partners track implementation progress and assisting the adjustment of strategies along the way to fill gaps and build on successes. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, while the pace of this progress is encouraging, it is equally clear that a great more needs to be done to address the uneven international evaluation and data landscape. In recent years, many of our most vulnerable populations, including rural women and girls, indigenous people, people living in extreme poverty, and people affected by conflict, are often left out of data sets and evaluation efforts. In an environment in which an unprecedented amount of data is required for SDG implementation and monitoring greater coordination of global evaluation efforts, it is a vital task at hand. As members of the UN Evaluation Group, together with the UN General Assembly and other entities, you have a central role to play in this conversation. Make no mistake, this conversation is of global importance, holding consequences for our common future. Therefore, some key steps present themselves. Firstly, we must support the work of UN evaluators on whose shoulders the 2030 Agenda places the responsibility of collecting, analyzing, and evaluating global data in line with the Global Indicator Framework. Secondly, as called for by the QCPR in December 2016, we need to scale up capacity building efforts for national and regional evaluation organizations in order to build up their resilience, responsiveness, and ability to collect and share high quality, disaggregated, and comparable data. Thirdly, we need to establish stronger and broader multi-stakeholder partnerships among all key actors across government, international and regional organizations, civil society, and the private sector, to leverage comparative advantages in data collection and evaluation. Fourthly, we must give special attention to ensure that most vulnerable and marginalized groups are captured in our data collection and evaluation efforts. And finally, we should look at ways to build up capacity to access and utilize big data in order to further promote data-driven, evidence-based decision-making. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, some people and some institutions seem daunted or overly challenged by evaluation, statistics, and audits. Having served on both public and private boards for 45 years now, I can say with absolute certainty that these three tools are essential to good governance. Thus, I have no doubt they are essential to ensuring honesty and accountability in our implementation of the SDGs. And so, as we continue our collective efforts to implement the SDGs and achieve a sustainable future for all, I seize this opportunity to thank you for your expertise, your dedication, your collaboration, and your hard work. May your hands be strengthened, and I thank you.
Well, it looks like Peter Thomson already gave us very clear guidance for the roadmap of what UNEG should do in the next few years. But today we are here more than 150 participants representing 47 different UN agencies, plus partners and friends and colleagues from civil society, academia, etc. In addition to all the colleagues and friends that are following us in the live web stream of the event. So let me just briefly introduce to our partners and colleagues who are not part of UNEG, just very briefly what UNEG is. So UNEG is the network of the evaluation offices of 48 different UN agencies, and we mainly have 4 objectives. The first one is to strengthen the evaluation function inside the UN system. The second is to strengthen the demand and the use of evaluation in decision-making within the UN system. The third is to strengthen system-wide evaluation mechanism so that the UN can really work in a coherent manner, in a meaningful manner, and in an effective and efficient manner together. And the fourth is about contributing to and benefiting from the global evaluation community through multi-stakeholder partnership, as Ambassador Thomson told us. We are guided by the so-called UNEG evaluation norm and standards. And after more than 10 years, they were updated last year to recognize the changes that are happening in the external environment. And we endorse 4 new norms. A norm on professionalization of the evaluation function, a norm on human rights and gender equality, a norm on national evaluation capacity development, and a norm on internationally agreed goals, including the Sustainable Development Goals. This is why, starting last year, our work is guided by the SDGs. This is why the Evaluation Week is aligned with the theme selected by ECOSOC in the framework of the annual national SDG reviews at the high-level political forum that happens every year in July at the General Assembly in New York. This is the key arena and forum where countries on a voluntary basis present their own efforts to implement the SDGs. Last year was the year 1 of the SDGs, and we got more than 25 countries presenting. This year, we got almost 45 countries that already registered to present at the forthcoming high-level political forum. And as a reminder, also thanks to the advocacy work of the United Nations Evaluation Group, together with its own partners, in the follow-up and review mechanism for the SDGs, it clearly mentioned that those national reviews should be based on country-led evaluation systems. So that's why this year we decided to talk about the role of evaluation in eradicating poverty and promoting prosperity in a changing world, because that's exactly the theme of the high-level political forum that will happen in July. And today we have the big honor of having 4 esteemed panelists who kindly agreed to join us today to share their reflection around 2 questions. The first one is, what's the role of evaluation in achieving the SDGs? What are some of the key opportunities, challenges, good practices, and lessons learned? And the second is, how do we ensure that the SDGs are properly reviewed and evaluated in each country, engaging all relevant stakeholders, always with a focus on the no one left behind? And after this we will open forum for questions and answers. I think today we really have the privilege and the honor of having a very diverse panel with us. We have David Kanja, who is the Assistant Secretary General of the Office of the Internal Oversight Services at the United Nations. He will bring us the perspective of the United Nations. Mr. Kanja brings 27 years of oversight experience to this position. He has served as a director of the United Nations Children's Fund, UNICEF, in the Office of the Internal Audit, And previously, he also served at the World Bank Group in various positions, including as Chief Auditor for Audit Quality and Strategy, Audit Manager, and Acting Auditor General. And prior to that, he served for 9 years also in the private sector at Deloitte. So David Kanja will bring us a strong perspective from the United Nations. Then we also have a perspective from a national policymaker, and that's Natalia Nikitenko, who is member of the National Parliament of the Kyrgyz Republic, but she's also in the steering committee of the Global Parliamentarian Forum for Development Evaluation. That is the forum that brings together parliamentarians from all over the world who are really leading national strategy to ensure that evaluation is embedded in national policy making and national policy decisions. Natalia Nikitenko was also chair of the Parliament Committee on Human Rights, Constitutional Legislation and State Structure, and also the Committee on Social Affairs, Education, Science, Culture, and Sport. And she was the initiator and the instrumental to the adoption of the national M&E law at the Kyrgyz Republic in 2014. So she will bring us a strong perspective from national policymakers, but not only national, but also global, because as I said, she's also a member of the steering committee of the Global Parliamentarian Forum for Development Evaluation. Then we have Per Bastøe, who is the director of the Norwegian Agency, the evaluation director at the Norwegian Agency for Development Cooperation, NORAD, but he's also the chair of the OECD DAC EvalNet. So the OECD DAC EvalNet is the network of the evaluation offices of the OECD DAC countries, so it's our peer network from OECD DAC. Per holds senior position in other parts of the Norwegian government administration, in the World Bank and in the Asian Development Bank. He also served at the executive board of the Inter-American Development Bank and the Inter-American Investment Corporation on behalf of the group of the European countries. And last but not least, we had Ziad Moussa, who is the president of IOC, the International Organization for Cooperation and Evaluation, that is the World Federation of National and Regional Evaluation Associations that bring together more than 150 associations from all over the world, from the Global South and from the Global North. And is also the co-chair of EvalPartners, the Global Partnership on National Evaluation Capacity Development. And Ziad has over 20 years of experience in leading complex multi-country evaluation across the Global South, in over 40 countries, with almost every major donor in the circuit. So we have really a very strong panel with a perspective from the UN, perspective from national parliaments, perspective from OECD DAC countries, and perspective from civil society organizations. So with this, I would like to start asking our panelists to address the first question, that is about the role of evaluation in achieving the SDGs goals, with a particular focus on what are the key opportunities, challenges, good practices, and lessons learned that you see from where you sit in your organizations. So we can start perhaps using the same order as we are in the table. So David Kanja, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I'll base my comments on what we are starting to do within OIOS, particularly in our evaluation unit, to adjust for the ongoing implementation of Sustainable Development Goals. As regards the role of evaluation, I think as indicated by Peter Thomson and the other speakers on the video, evaluation will make a vital contribution to the implementation of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development,
It will provide our organizations with information on what works well, what does not, and why things may not be working as they should. And it will thus help all the various stakeholders, both at the country level, the UN system, and the other stakeholders, to maximize and track progress in achieving sustainable development goals. Evaluation will also need to be conducted within all these stakeholders at the various levels that exist within them. And within countries, it will be part of the follow-up and review processes that are country-led. As regards opportunities, I see many opportunities for evaluation functions amongst all the various stakeholders. And I'll just mention some of the opportunities that I see as being the immediate ones. The first opportunity relates to the strengthening of capacities. And I think some of the speakers on the video talked about strengthening of capacities at the country level. There's also strengthening of capacities within the UN system and within other stakeholders. I think all our functions, we will need to look at what we need to do to see how we can right-size ourselves to make sure that we are doing the very best job possible. This will be a challenge for many of us, particularly given the environment of declining budgets. So we will need to collaborate and work smartly and work with others to make sure we are able to deliver on what needs to be done. Another opportunity I see is we will need to reshape our strategies, plans, and working methods to make sure that we are closely aligned with what our organizations are doing in terms of implementing the SDGs. We'll also need to do much more collaboration and sharing of best practices amongst ourselves and with other entities. I liked the way Peter Thomson put this. He talked about leveraging comparative advantages. We will need to do more of this to make sure that, again, we can enhance our effectiveness. Some of us may be involved in strengthening evaluation capacities at the country level, particularly in developing countries. We may receive requests to provide support and to help to make sure that those evaluation capacities are strong, or even within peer organizations. And some of us may also be involved in providing advice on evaluation and related matters. And I want to give some examples of what we are doing within OIS, just to connect them a little bit to these opportunities. One of the engagements we are considering is to review preparedness in a number of entities within the UN Secretariat. We want to make sure that these entities are prepared right now to deal with whatever needs to be done in terms of the implementation of the SDGs. That they've realigned their work, realigned their strategies, adjusted their plans, made sure the resources are focused in the right areas, and that they are doing the best job that they can to support the implementation of SDGs. We are also going to start, or we have started looking at SDG aspects as part of various evaluations. As an example, when we look at a commission, for example, the commission in Africa or the commissions all over the world, whenever we look at them, we start looking, are they prepared? Are they doing what needs to be done in relation to SDGs? We've also done an initial, I call it an advisory assignment. We've given advice on steps that UN entities should consider taking to measure their own contributions. And as part of this work, we did a mapping exercise on expected contributions of these entities to the achievement of SDGs. There might be many more opportunities for doing this sort of work, again, to help our organizations to do the very best job they can on implementation of SDGs. We are also considering many collaboration opportunities. One of the organizations we are collaborating with is INTOSAI, which is the International Organization of Supreme Audit Institutions. This is the organization of national audit offices. They call themselves Supreme Audit Institutions. And we are collaborating with them. They are also defining how they are going to support the achievement of SDGs. And some of the approaches they've developed are of great interest to us and maybe of great interest to you. One of them, which they are going to conduct probably across many of the countries in the world, is to assess the preparedness of national governments for implementing SDGs. They are also engaging in a series of performance audits within their particular countries, where they look at key government programs that contribute to specific aspects of SDGs. I mean, you can imagine if they look at an area like education or health, there are many things they can look at to see how their governments are undertaking the implementation of SDGs. We are also considering other collaboration opportunities. Within the UN, we are thinking of all of you, the UN evaluators, how we can work together on SDG activities, either in sort of parallel engagements or some form of joint engagements. We'll have to discuss further within UNEG. The evaluation unit of OIS is also looking at the work that our internal auditors are doing, because the internal auditors are also, they've also developed various approaches for supporting the implementation of SDGs. And the external auditors, for us, is the Board of Auditors. They are doing this as well. And the Joint Inspection Unit, which I know is also represented here. So all these oversight entities are going to be doing, or are going to be thinking of approaches, the same as what UNEG is doing right now. And there is a need to collaborate with them to make sure that we optimize coverage and minimize duplication. And in some organizations, I know there's a lot of complaints about fatigue, where too many assessments. So it's good that we collaborate with all these other entities. We are also exploring whether it's possible to collaborate with other national evaluation and audit functions, just to learn from each other and share information rather than, and sometimes to share information on how we are approaching things. So collaboration will be a big part of our work going forward. In terms of challenges, immediate challenges, one I already mentioned, as we strengthen capacities within the UN, there'll be challenges in terms of how do we right-size our functions given the environment we're in of declining budgets. And we'll need to keep discussing these issues with our governing bodies, with our senior managers, to make sure that we are prepared to do the work, properly prepared to do the work that needs to be done. Another challenge, and more for UN entities, is is their ability to monitor on their specific contributions, particularly as follow-up and review processes, as you will have seen from the design of SDGs, will be country-led. So there is a need to more clearly define what UN entities will monitor in terms of their specific contributions. Okay, I think that will be my comments on the first question.
Thanks a lot. Okay.
Dear ladies and gentlemen, it's a great pleasure to be here on this meeting. And definitely the role of the parliaments, the role of members of parliament in the process, raising the agenda of SDG, raising the agenda of evaluation, from my perspective, is very important. You know, the first question was, is evaluation important for SDG? I think it's obvious. The answer is obvious. Yes, it's very much important, because it's very much important to know, to have evidences, how successful we are with the declarations, and how successful we are coming from declaring SDGs to their practical implementation. And here is the big question. You know, regarding the different experiences and examples, all of us, we are people who are once in some 5 or 4 years, voting for members of parliaments, for some parties, delegating for our votes rights to MPs, to the parliaments, to deal with budgeting, to vote for legislation, to identify the future developments, national policies, strategies, development of the countries. But are we sure? Do we have many clues, many evidences that these decisions, that legislations, that strategies that members of parliaments are voting for, they're really based heavily on independent, reliable data, on evidences? It's another big question for many countries. I'm here representing the Kyrgyz Republic. This is a developing country. We passed through 2 revolutions. We have now the parliamentary system of governance. But we have our lessons learned when, unfortunately, the information was not very open to people. The real information, the real evidences of what's happening with the taxation, with the budget, with the programs, with the legislation. Do we really achieve the successes? This information was not passing through to the people, to the real owners of the country. And starting from 2014, our parliament, members of parliament, we tried to understand how to improve the system of communication between the decision-making and the people, between the funds and their implementation. We started to trying to find the answers to those and other questions. And several members of parliament started to work with National Evaluation Network, which used to have very good practices on evaluation. But these practices, they weren't integrated in the decision-making system of the country. So we definitely found it necessary to start collaboration, to find the way how to use the evaluation for country development, for well-being of people, how to build the legal framework, enabling environment to make this process changing in the country for better. It was not an easy period in our history. We're still on our way, building the legislation, legal framework for monitoring and evaluation for the parliament, government, and local authorities. And now we're on the way of capacity building, which is one of the most challenging process. But still, there are some big issues that we face. Regarding the challenges, regarding the questions that we're trying to find the answers for, this is if the SDG are really owned by the country, are really reaching, the understanding of SDG is really meeting the people in our country. Concerning the examples that we have, and having here representatives of United Nations, society, many organizations that really do significant and huge work to promote evaluation, to use evaluation for evaluating different programs and strategies. We also had our experience and kind of the maybe a lesson that we learned from MDG, that sometimes this very important work that is done on the international level or international level together with some level of decision-making is not very much linked with the expectations of the people. It's not very much linked with the final results. For example, reporting on some MDG, results. It was the good collaboration and work of international agencies with the presidential office experts. It was a very good presentation all over the world. But when they started trying to assess and evaluate actually inside the country, how many people did realize and aware that inside the country, what's going on? What was the effect? What was the impact? And we found that there is a gap. That is why one of the very important findings from our lessons learned in terms of real ownership and implementation of SDGs was, first of all, it should be really built in with the national policies and strategies. It should be rose on the high political level in the parliament, in the government. It should be actually reached to each person in the country, understood and shared and owned by people in the country. Otherwise, we can implement many different methodologies, tools, etc. But if it's not reaching the people, it will not perfectly work, will not achieve the goal. So now we're working as on the part of our national strategy on SDG, on this big issue, how to organize the national policy on SDG, how to include all possible stakeholders in the decision-making process, because no one should be left behind. And definitely there are many different experiences, ups and downs that we face during this process. But we should be concentrated on collaboration between different stakeholders. The national strategies and policies should be in the focus. And definitely the system of capacity building on the national level is something that is really missing. Another thing that I would like to mention, this is importance and involvement of parliaments in this process. Recently, we had the third Global Evaluation Forum in Bishkek in Kyrgyzstan. Some of you participated in the big event. And there was very interesting discussions in different sectors, including the parliamentary meeting. Our Global Parliamentarian Forum for Evaluation is growing, and they are very glad about that. And during the meeting, we discussed many interesting things related how should be the MPs personally involved in this process of promoting, raising the agenda of SDG and evaluation, and that it should be not just MPs personally, but it should be parliaments as institutions, because this is the parliaments which have the power to make the legal framework. These are the parliaments who deal with budgeting, making sure that some programs, strategies, they are funded. And also these are the parliaments with very serious oversight functions. But are those powers and functions used to address the achievement of SDG or set up evaluation as a system on the national level? It depends from country to country. But speaking from the global south, let's say, one of the findings of the Global Evaluation Forum from Parliamentarian group, unfortunately, we can admit that parliaments are very often excluded from this process, or they're included on some particular stages of decision-making. And our Global Parliamentarians Forum was made with the idea to promote, to change the situation, to promote the idea of evaluation, to include the members of parliaments and parliaments as institutions in the process, to use the opportunities and power the parliaments to raise the agenda of SDG, raise the agenda of evaluation. So we have many different challenges and many different achievements for these several years that we're working as Global Parliamentarian Forum. But the main perspective is that definitely there should be more partnership and collaboration between the international organizations, United Nations, between the parliaments of the countries, and between the national levels, between the national level of decision-making and the people who really should own the evidences, the results of this huge work on SDG ownership and implementation. And there might be the last point that I would like to mention for this stage. You know, as one of the discussion from this Global Evaluation Forum, several times some MPs, members of parliament from different global regions said very interesting word that might be, you know, provoking, not understood, or, you know, have different reaction. Parliamentarians told that it's very important, right at the same time, developing and implementing the national system of evaluation. Make sure that they are depoliticized. So it's very interesting message, because we should build this system right at the same time, building the national system of evaluation, making sure that all the components are in place, making sure that there is collaboration, involving the parliaments, because it's very important to raise this agenda on the high political level, but at the same time not allowing that this instrument be used for political reasons. It should be really independent. Evaluation should be really not politicized. That is why for Global Parliamentarian Forum, we also have this message, this target in mind, you know, to develop the evaluation system, to, you know, provide its rooting in the country, to collaborate on the regional, global level, and at the same time to raise the agenda how to use evaluation, to explain that members of parliaments to the parliaments. And I think that this is, for this period of time, is really something that will be discussed on the nearest regional meetings of the parliaments, meetings of our Global Parliamentarians Forum. That is why I hope that many of you are working with national parliaments for different programs, for different initiatives, and I think that establishing and developing this linkage will be definitely something that is needed for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Marco. I'm also going to mention some opportunities and some challenges. Being an evaluator, it's of course more tempting to talk about the challenges than the opportunities, but I'll force myself to mention some of the opportunities. One is that the SDGs, I have four opportunities. The first one is that I see this as a new era for evaluation. And I think the year of the evaluation 2015 proved that this is a new era of evaluation. And of course, Marco was central in, I think it was more than 90 events worldwide focusing on evaluation. Of course, also in OECD, DAC, it was a lot of focus on the SDGs and evaluation. So first is the new era. The second one is that the SDGs, of course, as my colleagues have mentioned, brings a new focus. It brings some focus on what to evaluate, because it is this great set of objectives and targets. It focuses a lot on poverty, on human development issues. Which is of course extremely useful, and also how some of these issues needs to be solved in collaboration between not only one sector but several sectors across sectors, and then by whom. It is of course to be done at the national level primarily, and then also I think it brings on focus on when. And I think maybe we will see more efforts on real-time evaluations, because we need to shorten the feedback loops and the timeliness of evaluation efforts. So it brings a focus. My third point is that I think it revitalized the efforts to build national capacity. Right now, it is a group in OECD DAC EvaLnet that is meeting in Stockholm to discuss how to work in EvaLnet with capacity building. And then we have collaboration with UNDP, with UNICEF, with other parts of the UN system. And I think this gives a good opportunity to focus more on national capacity building. We have tried before with only partly success, but this is a new opportunity. And the fourth opportunity is regarding what my colleague has also mentioned, partnerships. Partnerships between UNEG, EvalNet, ECG, among the multilateral development banks, national evaluation associations, etc. It's a great opportunity for partnerships. And then to the challenges. And of course, I have more challenges than I have opportunities. The first challenge, which I think I'm very concerned with, is to bridge the gap between rhetoric and reality. It's a lot of rhetoric around the SDGs. I've hardly been to any meeting at all concerning international development without talking about the SDGs. But it's totally unclear what we mean by focusing on the SDGs. There's a lot of rhetoric in this, and we need to bring this closer to reality. We need to be more precise on what we're talking about, and not only mention leave no one behind. Of course, we don't want to leave no one behind, but what does it mean for us now? The second challenge is to disentangle the confusion between M&E. We talk about M&E as it is the same term. It's not the same term. It is two different terms. We're talking about monitoring, which is somehow linked with reporting more closely. But evaluation is something different. Evaluation has an analytical element that is wider and different from the monitoring part. And we need to understand what evaluation is and not only talk about M&E or reporting or all these reports that we're supposed to make. I think we have experience, and I'm sure you can talk about that from the MDG reporting. It was a lot of reporting, but not always reflecting a reality on the ground. So we need to understand the evaluation element in this. The third challenge is to make sure that this is not a donor focus. Again, we have experienced that we have captured from the donor side many of these initiatives, and we're competing between the UN, the OECD, the bank groups on who is going to be the driver of the effort. But again, this is a national level agenda. And we need to listen to Natalia and other people like Natalia. This needs to be owned by at the country level. So we need this not to be a donor-driven initiative. The fourth challenge is an obvious one. It is about strengthening the weak national capacity, the statistical capacity. We have made efforts for many, many years through Paris 21 in OECD, and only have some partial successes. The funding for statistical capacity building is now, I think it is 0.25% of ODA that goes to statistical capacity building. That's almost nothing. even though we all agree that this is extremely important. So we need to be able to address the challenge of national capacity building. And of course, the fifth challenge has to do with the post-truth era we are in. It is a lot of political resistance towards facts and evidence. And we need to be able to bring in the truth in government decision-making. I wish, I mean, kind of envy Natalia that there is a demand for evidence from the population. I wish we had the same demand in all countries. But that's the fifth challenge. That's all. Thanks.
Thank you. I mean, I was listening very carefully to you, Per, and didn't write. Yeah, I swear I wrote them before, but I find myself like ping-ponging some of the points you just raised. But rather than showering you with opportunities and challenges and what have you, I kind of pinpointed one of each. So in terms of opportunities, this global momentum around the SDGs is giving a kind of new life to the evaluation profession, which otherwise has been slowly being concentrated and I would say phagocytes by big corporations who kind of process more and more evaluations with little attention to that granularity, set of beliefs and values and what have you that makes our profession a bit different than other professions and makes us enjoy it. So in a sense, either we grab this momentum around the SDGs and put evaluation at the center, or we will soon be running out of business and reaching a prophecy by Elliot Stern, for those of you who follow Elliot, who was anticipating that by 2025, evaluation would be dead as a profession. In terms of challenge, I think the biggest challenge would be walking the talk and overcoming indifference, like going in a rural village somewhere and telling them, well, you know what, there's these SDGs, and they will ask you, so what? And we have to ask ourselves, so what? If they're there, if they're evaluated. I mean, we have to go beyond the evaluation to the difference it makes. And to do that, there are three considerations to take into account. One of them is, indeed, too much monitoring does not mean evaluation, and we cannot like put M&E in the same basket and live happily ever after. Monitoring is important, but at some point there's a need to take stock through evaluation of what is going on. And related to it is the death of the silver bullet era. I mean, I don't see how RCTs or log frames are gonna assist us in evaluating complex interrelated SDGs, and that leaves a whole set of us who swear by silver bullets and et al. A kind of orphan, because we're going into uncharted territory where we're talking about outcomes, we're talking about complexity, about interdependence, about theories of change, and all of this new jargon kind of implies that we have to evolve the thinking, the methods, etc., to be able to follow and to be able to walk the talk, as I said. And a challenge that we are, again, in terms of walking the talk, I think nobody in this room argues that the cornerstone of the evaluation of the SDGs is national evaluation systems, national evaluation capacity, national evaluators, what have you. But the UNEG colleagues and where they stand, and the rest of us and where we stand, I think are all coming to a certainty that financing evaluation field building, empowering statisticians, empowering evaluators, empowering evaluation functions within governments, etc., is becoming more and more difficult to finance. So we're reaching that utopia where we are supposed to climb the mountain, but we neither have the climbing gears, nor we're, allowed to give ourselves the proper ways to climb it. Okay, we were used to climb hills or little mountains, but I don't see us climbing the Annapurna and the Everest with the same equipment that we do in climbing a hill. There was a bit the good practices and the lessons learned were a bit muted, so let me point one of each, as I said. One of the good practices is, rather than looking at the 17 and contemplating how we're gonna approach them, is to take them one by one. The Rome-based agencies were among the leaders in taking SDG 2 and starting to look at it and initiating some kind of work around it. UNEG, UN Women and colleagues are looking at SDG 8 and seeing how to go about it and how to make it embrace SDG 10, was it? The inequality? 5 and 10, yeah. So 5 and 10 together. So more of these would make the problem easier to handle than if we look at the 17s altogether. And to do that, most importantly, we don't need to look at this from our little angle as UNEG and from our little angle as civil society and from their little angle as OECD or Parliament or UN or what have you. It's breaking down the silos, working hand in hand with the stakeholders that are around this table, but also very important stakeholders that are not around this table. I would think of private sector, impact investors, academia, and everyone who's looking, who's doing their own little part of evaluation to work collectively. And last but not least, one of the lessons, the earlier lessons that are emerging, and that I would label a big elephant in the room, is that the SDGs are first and foremost political. And they require some kind of political commitment. And all the technical talk that we do, unless it's accompanied with a lot of political push and pull and with a lot of political empowerment, would not go anywhere. This post-truth era, I loved it, post-truth era. Or to put it slightly more diplomatically, the policy making that is built on averages. We've improved income by 20%, and that's 50% for the top, for the richer 1%, and that's minus 25% for the poorest 10%, but still it's 20% increase in income. This has led to a lot of, I would say, disillusion about equity as translated in policies, and all of this re-questioning of social models and what have you, and return to protectionism and everything that's around it. And in that case, and the global evaluation agenda clearly states that evaluation is not value neutral. And I would say that our values, the values we embrace, the values that makes us evaluators rather than auditors or any other beautiful profession that is around, puts an additional responsibility on us to kind of guide the reshaping of the political discourse in the sense that it's built on truth, in the sense that it's built on evidence, and I would see this as a lesson, but also as an opportunity, as a challenge, and as a good practice taken together. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much to the four panelists, really fascinating discussions. I just wanted to alert you that I would like to pause a moment before going to the second question. I would like to give the floor to the audience. If you have questions for the panelists, so get prepared. I think there are 2 mics in the room, and perhaps if you can have. No, sorry, yes, there are everybody has its own mic, so
this is Vienna.
Yeah, exactly. So start thinking about the questions, but perhaps just a few highlights from what I heard so far. I mean, David just reminded us the dual responsibility for the UN system, that is not only to strengthen the capacity of the UN system to evaluate the support that the UN is giving to countries for implementing and achieving the SDGs, but also the responsibility of the UN to strengthen national capacities for evaluation. So we really have to work on these 2 sides. Natalia stressed once again the importance of national ownership, that somehow it was also echoed by Per, saying that it should not be donor-focused. So I think there is a convergence of perspective here. I think everybody spoke about the importance of always keeping in mind that when we talk about SDGs, and also when we talk about the evaluation of SDGs, we are talking about a political challenge. I mean, the 2030 agenda is a political agenda. Evaluation, as we all know, is a technical process that is carried out within a political environment. So I think that we as evaluators, we should always keep in mind that whatever we are doing is within a political context that is getting more and more complicated. I mean, as Per reminded us, unfortunately, more and more countries are moving towards this post-truth society. So, I mean, till a few years ago, I think we were thinking that, at least in principle, everybody was agreeing on the importance of evidence-based decision-making. Well, now that's not the case anymore. Unfortunately, more and more people and even nation leaders, they don't believe anymore in evidence-based policy-making. And you know, with all this discussion about fake news and post-truth society, etc., it's something that probably we as global evaluation community, we should think, what are the implications for our function? Per also reminded us about the importance of funding, because when we talk about national capacity development, you know, I mean, funding is obviously a very important element of the discussion. And then Ziad remind us about, in addition to all the discussion about the political environment, etc., both from a technical point of view, what should be the new approaches to evaluate the complexity of the SDGs, and just a reminder that nobody can do it alone, but we really need to work in partnership, not only among ourselves, meaning within the UN system, but beyond the UN system. So please join me for a round of applause for the panelists for the first. And now really I would like to give the floor to all of you. Don't be shy, as you know. So please very briefly introduce yourself, who you are, from what agency, and then try to be to the point with your questions. So I see one hand over there.
Thank you very much, and a warm thanks to the panelists. Thank you for coming here to Vienna and thereby also bringing cohesion in our UN system. My name is Bente Angel Hansen. I'm from the Mission of Norway, and I have a couple of questions. First, I would like to know how you are working with the statistical people in New York and otherwise to see how the way we do the statistics can be improved and also through the statistics help the work of the evaluators. since you are here now in Vienna, I think that Vienna is key to the implementation of the SDG 16. I'm thinking about transnational organized crime, corruption, also counterterrorism. And I know it's early days on the evaluation there, but I think also it is important to plan ahead. How do we measure this? And if anyone could comment on that, please. I thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I think we could take a round of questions, and if there are specific questions for colleagues other than those sitting here in the panel, so feel free to answer. For example, Katarina or colleagues from UNODC, there was a specific question on SDG 16 on crime, etc. So just feel free to answer. Yes, please.
Thank you, Marco. I have a question that I would like to ask to Ms. Natalia and to Ziad. Perhaps both could share their views on this. It's a bit direct.
Just introduce yourself.
Oh, my name is Krishna Belbase. I work at UNICEF's Evaluation Office in New York. If you were to respond to the question which I'm posing, which is, what would be the role of the donor community as one group, and the UN community as the second group, and the third group, the national governments themselves, and let's not talk about civil society because a lot of investment is going there. Those three groups, in terms of if you had to take a country and work to empower the country in terms of their own capacity to institutionalize evaluation in their system, to really respond to the evaluation of SDGs, what role would you foresee? What would be useful from different actors, these three groups particularly? Thank you.
Thanks. Yes, please.
Thank you. My name is Karin Kohlweg. I'm the former head of the evaluation unit of the Austrian Development Agency. My question is addressed to Ziad, because you mentioned that it would be useful to evaluate the SDGs one by one, because due to the complexity, and as an evaluation manager, I understand this approach. But the question is, that the issue of pulling apart some of the SDGs may also be an issue. And at the same time, you also mentioned breaking down the silos is necessary. So how can we overcome that? And maybe you could elaborate a little bit on that. On one side, suggesting evaluating SDGs one by one, which then might be falling again into different organizations. And we know a lot that various evaluations are taking place at the same time, and not everybody knows about each other's evaluations, but at the same time breaking down the silo. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Rahul Soor. I'm the Chief of Peacekeeping Evaluation in the Office of Internal Oversight Services. My question relates to some of the points which have been made by the panel in terms of realism, in terms of the political aspect. And this concerns the direction of the SDGs. It seems that the UN system works on the assumption that it is only the developing world which are the target of these SDGs. But the question is, in this interconnected world, why should that be so? And if we have to presume a model in which all the knowledge and the money flows from the north to the south, I think the assumption is questionable that all the problems are there in the south itself. So the UN system's orientation is towards the developing world, and if we are talking about the world as one, should it be so, and should the UN system also start focusing on the developed world when implementing SDGs? Thank you.
Any other question or comments? Yeah, please.
Thank you. I have one comment and one question.
Introduce yourself, please.
Sorry, my name is Ada Ocampo from UNICEF. The comment I have is related to what the colleague from the Austrian Development Cooperation has said. To me, one thing is to welcome the initiatives that some organizations have taken to evaluate one or two SDGs. I think we should welcome that due to different reasons. For example, it can take a while, or it can take some time to actually collaborate, coordinate in order to come with joint activities. That's one thing. But the other is to advocate for a silo approach to evaluating the SDGs. So I think we have to be careful on that. One thing is to welcome at this stage, probably. The other is what is our role in terms of advocacy, in terms of promoting the interconnection, in promoting the complexity and their relationships of the SDGs and the SDGs that are cross-cutting. The question I have for the first panelist, sorry, I don't recall your name, from the Secretariat is, what are your views? To me, if the UN system, the evaluation community, and the senior management within the evaluation system as such, wants to remain relevant, one of the things the UN system should do at this stage is actually promote and institutionalize national evaluation capacity development within UN agencies. But although we recognize, and we recognize in the CPE in the morning, the progress made towards institutionalizing national evaluation capacity development, the progress is slow, and in many agencies there is still resistance. And in those that are institutionalized, the resources, human and financial, that are put for national evaluation capacity development are sometimes insignificant. So what are your views related to that? Thank you.
In parentheses, Ziad, get ready for your answer, because I think it's quite controversial, that comment that you did. And just for clarification, even within the UN, it looks like we don't have a common position, in the sense that if it's true that the Rome-based agencies organized last year or 2 years ago this event on evaluating SDGs 2, the New York-based agencies had a different approach, and we did not organize an event to evaluate SDG 5 and 10. We organized an event to evaluate the entire SDGs with a no one left behind lens. So we are taking different approaches so far. So I think we have only 20 minutes, so perhaps it's time to give the floor back to the panel. But before that, I just wanted to double check with Katarina if you wanted to address that particular question on SDG 16 related to crime.
Yes, thank you so much for the question. Just to recall that goal 16...
Sorry, just introduce yourself for those who don't know.
Apologies. Katarina Kaiser, I'm head of the Independent Evaluation Function of the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime. Just to recall that goal 16, of course, invites absolutely all players to contribute, but given our mandate, we have a specific role, of course. And in terms of national evaluation capacity building, despite the fact that our evaluation function is very small, we are still very agile and innovative in many ways. So our approach to this is using the principles that have been developed at the Bangkok Conference on National Evaluation Capacity Building. These are the principles that basically offer a frame for national evaluation capacity engagement. And we have been selecting, together with the country team in specific countries, and we have started in Morocco, selecting priorities together with UN agencies that work on the ground in Rabat. And we have identified several priority areas together with the government in Morocco, and these are, for example, building an evaluation curriculum in 2 universities so that a cadre of national evaluation experts could be formed in the Maghreb region. Also, we have invested in e-learning, having an evaluation awareness and capacity building course in French and Arabic. Furthermore, we have co-financed a regional evaluation conference at which we have presented best practices. In fact, UN Women was there as well. This was recently in Rabat. So this means that in order to build national evaluation capacity drivers, we are investing through multiple different approaches, with the ultimate goal, of course, of building complete ownership within the Ministry of Justice and Ministry of Interior. For example, we want to be able to reach a point in which the Ministry of Justice or Interior is able to evaluate strategies on preventing terrorism or the whole notion of foreign terrorist fighters. So in that sense, we bring not just capacity building initiatives, but also knowledge on what has worked and hasn't worked elsewhere to the table in Rabat. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Katarina. And I think with this we can come back to the panel. So perhaps we can use the same order if it's okay with you.
The questions I'm going to answer actually relate to question 2, which I know you're going to ask us later. And that question is talking about how we ensure that SDGs are properly reviewed or evaluated in each country. UN entities, my views are UN entities will not have a direct role in this because countries will have responsibility for follow-up and review process at the country level. However, there are many ways in which we can assist, and one of them is the strengthening of capacity of national data systems and evaluation. And I think two of the questions we're talking about, one of the questions was talking about statistical offices, and the other one was talking about, I think it was to do with the institutionalizing national evaluation capacity development. So somewhere, I mean, the UN and other stakeholders and its partners, the countries and the other partners, the other donors, NGOs, everyone in partnership, there will need to be initiatives to strengthen these national data systems and evaluation programs in countries. On the evaluation side, I know that many, particularly developing countries, don't have national evaluation offices, or something that looks like a national evaluation office. So there's a lot of work to be done. Now, national audit offices are trying to fill this gap, and it's unclear how good a job they are going to do. But there is a need in this capacity strengthening to start looking and talking to countries and helping them and working with them in terms of should there be a national evaluation function somewhere within government. And on national data systems, we are very interested in the statistical offices in the UN, both in New York as well as in the various commissions, because this function should be part of the capacity building that will need to, or the help that will need to be provided to strengthen national data systems. So that function, together with others, will need to help countries to make sure that the equivalent statistical offices, or whatever term they use in the countries, are also strong and are able to provide robust data that can be used for evaluation and also for monitoring progress. On one other question, the one on evaluating one or two SDGs, I mean, I wasn't involved in the earlier discussion, but my view is that many of these are indivisible, so it would be hard. It would be difficult to look at one or two of them. They are indivisible, you need to look at them. And then the other complication is that if at the country level it's country-led, then it's a real question on how you approach it if you look at one or two SDGs.
Regarding the statistic offices and the system, definitely on the national level we pay attention to build the capacity of our statistic system and trying to involve the statistic committee in all the committees on the national level responsible for SDG implementation. For example, we established a special committee headed by the Prime Minister to make sure that SDG are owned implemented in the country. And in this committee, we included not just like the ministers, but also heads of the committees from the parliament, civil society, international organization, and statistic committee. This is regarding also the question of collaboration. Because definitely, you know, we have different stories, you know, and cases in, for example, in our country, when sometimes we have the cases when the donors, they kind of recommended or advised some strategies and policies. And we had the times when some programs on the national level were kind of donor-driven because of some poor governance, because of some problems in the system of state management. But after some time, we were able to change the situation, and now it's the country-driven, you know, country-interest-driven process. So this is the country, the government, the parliament that sets up the national strategy, and discussing with donor society, international organizations, civil society, on the open format, on the open platform, like the different opportunities, how to work together, which direction can be supported by different donors and organizations. So creating this approach of communication is very important for the countries. And regarding the SDG 16, the corruption, etc., so in our country, this is the big case, the big problem. Unfortunately, the corruption is kind of disturbing the many institutions, you know, in the country. So we're not at the stage, you know, to develop the proper like strategy, you know, or system to maybe share with other world, but we're on the way to find it. And regarding the fighting corruption, there was established a special anti-corruption committee under the presidency of the president and the parliament. We all the time try to combine the participation, make sure participation of key institutions, key decision makers, and civil society. And this anti-corruption committee is developing special criteria, indicators, measures to monitor all national strategies, policies, and programs through the perspective of anti-corruption. So they are working kind of beyond, you know, and on top of the government and the parliament in some ways of corruption, you know, to make sure that these strategies and policies are passing through the anti-corruption like criteria. And definitely regarding the global south and global north, I think that definitely here are many representatives of global north, and I'm in this case representing the global south, but we understand that SDG are making us in many ways interdependent, and development of funding, development, and achievements on implementation of SDG should be definitely the case for both global south and global north. I think it's a big agenda. It's you know, how to rethink, review, reestablish the evaluation system in the global north, as well as for the global south that I also represent. You know, this is the case how to build this system, how to make sure that they are kind of organized, that they cover different stakeholders, different players.
Just a short comment on the statement that this is very development focused. That's not entirely true. OECD countries have focused a lot on also the status of the SDGs in OECD countries. And last July, OECD published a report called the Measuring Distance to the SDG Targets, a pilot assessment on where OECD countries stand. And if I put on the Norwegian government hat, the Norwegian government made last September a commitment to have a national plan to follow up the implementation of SDGs in Norway. So I think this is also a focus on developed countries. But of course, today we're talking primarily about developing countries. Thanks.
Thank you. Again, on the developed dilemma, we were this morning at a session at the Austrian Ministry of Foreign Affairs with the different state actors who are in charge of reporting on the SDGs. And they were saying that the developed countries are having a much more difficult time than developing countries who had already developed mechanisms for the MDGs, while the, let's say, OECD countries, that's brand new to them on how to report. Now to the issue of, one at a time or all together or somewhere in the middle, I don't know. This is, again, I'm afraid, a kind of wake-up call to everyone in this room to remember that it's not the UN who kind of leads the process or who kind of owns the process. The UN or UNEG might prefer to look at them together, others might prefer to look at one of them, but this choice cannot be imposed to other stakeholders. And this is where I was saying breaking down the silos. I mean, probably the civil society and the predominantly agricultural nation would like to prefer to something that touches the livelihoods of the people and makes it tangible to them. Similarly, a small island state that is, threatened by climate change might want to start by climate change. Others might opt to work together, agriculture and climate change, because they are interrelated. So there are a zillion possibilities available, but what I was trying to propose is a realpolitik approach, in the sense that rather than sit and wait that everything is ready for the launch, and in the meantime we're getting ready because they're complex, because they're interrelated, because there's 169 indicators to look at, etc., to start somewhere and then join the dance, but with a strong reminder that everybody needs to work hand in hand, and it's the UN family, together with the civil society, together with the national governments, together with the organizations of professional evaluators that I represent, etc., who together will lead the dance. So it's not take them one by one or take them all together. What I'm saying is to use entry points that bring it closer to the understanding of the people and that lead to actions and to improvements on the longer run. That was what I wanted to say.
Thanks a lot. Well, so I mean, it didn't came up strongly about the importance of being culturally responsive. So we are in Vienna, and if we want to be responsive to the local culture, we should finish by 5 p.m. and that is in about 7 minutes. So perhaps I would like just to highlight perhaps 4 takeaway messages. The first one is that it looks like we are in a new era where the SDGs are really our biggest opportunity on the one side, but also our biggest challenge. Biggest opportunity because it's the first time that 192 head of states and also representatives from civil society and private sector, they came together committing themselves in not only implementing the SDGs, but also having a follow-up and review mechanism for the SDGs that should be informed by country-led evaluations. Also because biggest opportunity, because this commitment is not only at the international level, but more and more is also at national level under the leadership of several parliaments and parliamentarians in different countries of the world. So there is It's the first time that there is a strong demand for evaluation, also as we heard from the videos, from the previous and the current UN Secretary General, and also the President of the UN General Assembly. But it's also our biggest challenge, because we all recognize, and one of the contentious points was exactly, should we evaluate SDGs one by one in silos, or the complexity of the SDGs?
One by one, not in silos.
Okay. But let's say that was perhaps the topics that was a little bit more controversial. But definitely, SDGs brings a lot of complexity, and therefore a lot of challenges for us as an evaluation community to be able to evaluate such complexity, and also to be able to evaluate the SDGs with a focus on the no one left behind. So, I mean, the time of the national average is gone. So really, what are the implications for us as evaluation community to evaluate the effectiveness and efficiencies of national policies or even the UN interventions, not only at the level of national average, but for the different populational groups with a focus on the most marginalized. So this brings to the second takeaway, that is really the importance for the national SDGs reviews, etc., to be really country-led and country-owned. And when we say country, we don't mean governments only. I mean, the SDGs are pretty clear on this. The SDGs says they should be, the process should be led by the government, because anyway, the government has a very important role to play, but it should be an inclusive and participatory process. And therefore, civil society, academia, and private sector, etc., should be involved in these kind of national SDGs reviews. And when we say countries, I think we don't mean only developing countries, but actually we mean all the countries of the world, including the OECD DAC countries, because as we know, SDGs are universal. Are universal, and therefore also donor countries should be engaging in these processes. So this brings to the third takeaway message, that is really the importance of national evaluation capacity development. If we say that they should be country-led and country-owned, we all know the diversity in the world. We all know that there are countries that are very well advanced when it comes to national evaluation systems, but there are other countries that are less advanced. And I'm not making any distinction between the so-called developed countries versus the developing countries, because we know that nowadays some of the best national evaluation systems are in the global south. So it's really, again, this kind of universal perspective. So the importance of national evaluation capacity development, all different stakeholders have different roles to play. But just as a reminder, when we talk about national evaluation capacity development, we are not talking only about the individual levels. Therefore, we are not only talking about training. I mean, strengthening individual capacities for evaluation is very important, is necessary, but is not sufficient. We are also talking about strengthening institutional capacities to manage good quality and relevant evaluations. And we are also talking about an enabling environment, a national enabling environment for evaluation. Because as a reminder, once again, evaluations is carried out within a political environment. And that's why it's very important to focus not only on the supply sides of the equation, meaning on strengthening the technical capacities to provide good quality evaluations, but also the demand side of the equation, meaning the capacities of policymakers really to have an evaluative thinking mentality, and really to value the importance of evidence-based policy making, especially in a post-truth society, as unfortunately several countries are embracing. So this, or few,
but big.
But big. And this brings to the last takeaway message about the importance of partnership and multi-stakeholder partnerships. So these are really significant challenges, no individual organization, ministry can do it alone. And that's why it's so important to have this multi-stakeholder partnership where we have governments, civil society, parliaments, UN agencies, donors, academia, private sectors coming together to make sure really that we can move forward this agenda. So with this, once again, I would like to thank a lot all the panelists. Please join me on the last round of applause for all the panelists. And obviously, thanks a lot to all of you who join us today. So just as a reminder, not for those who are following us online, but for the lucky ones who are here physically, then now we are moving to the reception. And perhaps if you can just remind us at what time and where the reception will be.
It starts at 5 in the terrace, in the restaurant.
Restaurants where there is the cafeteria.
Yes, the
outside
F building.
There is
the
a very
F
nice
building.
terrace with a view on the park.
Follow the herd.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
And then who are following us online, have a drink right after following us and send the bill to IOCE. We love you.